You are one step away from building a system in your backyard that produces more protein per square meter than any cattle ranch, delivers more food in a single weekend than most Brazilian families buy in an entire month at the supermarket, and costs practically nothing to maintain once it is up and running. In the Brazilian countryside, families living on small farms and rural properties have been operating systems like this for decades. Modest backyard ponds with no pumps, no electric filters, and no store-bought feed, quietly producing fish, eggs, and fertilizer all year round. Today I will show you exactly how this system works, why it is so efficient, and the technique I will reveal to you at the end of this video. A technique I have never seen printed in any conventional gardening or self-sufficiency book. Stick around until the end, because what I am about to share will forever change the way you think about food independence. This type of system is old, much older than most people imagine. Over 2,500 years ago, Chinese farmers were already describing domestic pond aquaculture methods so efficient that a single setup could feed an entire family for decades without buying feed and without depending on anyone. Centuries later, during the Tang Dynasty, an imperial ban forced these farmers to raise multiple species together in the same pond. And the result was the world's first polyculture system. Different species occupying different niches with no competition and no waste. A stacked, self-regulating system that ran on its own. This knowledge spanned millennia because it was too valuable to lose, and its logic is exactly the same as what works today in a backyard pond in the countryside of Minas Gerais, Goiás, or the northeast of Brazil. A pond that feeds itself is a pond that does not depend on supply chains, does not suffer from supermarket price hikes, and cannot be disrupted by any external crisis. Think about this. Anyone who raises chickens in their backyard spends money on feed every month. Anyone with a conventional fish pond spends money on feed. Anyone who buys meat at the grocery store spends more every year. Every year costs go up. Every year you become more dependent on a chain you do not control. And every year a new agricultural product appears, promising to solve the exact problem the previous product created. That is not farming. That is being trapped in a system designed to keep you spending. Now imagine a modest pond, about 3 by 4.5 meters, sitting quietly right next to the vegetable garden. A pond that nobody feeds. The fish grow on their own. The ducks live right next to it, laying eggs almost every day. The family eats from it all year round, with no store-bought feed, no expensive equipment, and no complicated maintenance. This exists, it works, and anyone with a piece of land can build it. This system has 4 components, and they work together as a single living machine. The first is the ducts. This is the piece that most backyard pond guides completely omit, and it is the piece that makes everything else work. The ducks are not decoration. They are the biological managers of your entire ecosystem. When they swim, they stir up the bottom sediments and release nutrients into the water column. When they eat and digest, they return nitrogen directly to the pond. This nitrogen feeds the algae. The algae feed the phytoplankton. The zooplankton feed the small fish. The small fish feed the large fish. Research on integrated aquaculture systems shows that ducks with access to a pond can obtain up to 30% of their total nutritional needs by foraging for insects, aquatic plants, and small organisms in the water. This means you reduce your feed cost by almost a third simply by letting the ducks do what they do naturally. Khaki Campbell ducks, the most suitable breed for this system, lay between 280 and 340 eggs per year per bird. A small flock of 3 female ducks will give your family between 840 and 1,020 eggs per year. That equals more than 170 eggs a month from birds that are simultaneously managing your pond's ecosystem. You are not choosing between ducks and fish. You are stacking functions. Each function multiplies the yield of all the others. The second component is the aquatic plants, and this is where most beginners make their biggest mistake. They treat the plants as something optional, but they are not. They are the filtration system, the oxygen supply, and one of the most productive food sources in the entire setup. Cattails planted along the shallow edges of the pond act as one of the most efficient biological filters found in nature. Their root systems extract excess nitrogen and phosphorus from the water, preventing uncontrolled algae blooms and keeping the ecosystem balanced. A ring of cattails around the shallow edge of your pond will do more for water quality than any mechanical filter you could buy. Water lilies provide shade, which reduces the water temperature in the summer and drastically decreases evaporation. Submerged plants like hornwort release oxygen during daylight hours, which is crucial for fish health in hot climates like ours here in Brazil. Floating plants, like water lettuce, absorb nutrients so efficiently that municipal sewage treatment plants use them on an industrial scale. Research in integrated aquaculture has shown that aquatic plants can eliminate up to 90% of the nitrogenous waste produced by fish. The plants absorb it, the water stays clean, the fish stay healthy, and you do almost nothing but watch. Next comes the third component, the fish themselves. And here I want to be very specific because this is the point where regulations matter and where many people make expensive mistakes. Tilapia is by far the most accessible and productive species for backyard ponds in the Brazilian climate. It grows fast, reaching half a kilo in 5 to 6 months under good conditions. A small pond with 50 tilapia fingerlings can yield between 20 and 25 kilos of harvest-ready fish in a single growing season. And our great advantage here in Brazil is that the climate heavily favors tilapia. It thrives best in water above 20 degrees Celsius, and in most of the Brazilian territory, we have that all year round or almost all year round. Other options that work very well are tambaqui and pacu, native species that adapt perfectly to smaller ponds and grow well on the ecosystem's natural food. Lamprey is also excellent as a forage fish. It reproduces quickly and serves as live food for the larger fish. Before starting, consult your state's environmental agency or IBAMA to find out which species are allowed in your region, because the rules vary from state to state. The principle is always the same. Choose species that demand nothing from you and return a harvest year after year without fail. That is the point. True self-sufficiency. The fourth component, and the most invisible of all, is the beneficial bacteria. These microscopic workers convert the ammonia from fish waste first into nitrites and then into nitrates that your plants absorb. This nitrogen cycle is the backbone of the entire system. Once established, it balances itself. You are not managing a farm. You are tending to a living ecosystem that has been doing this work for millions of years without human help. Your only job is to create the right conditions and then get out of the way. So how much does it really cost to build this? And how do you get started? I want to give you real numbers because vague promises are exactly what make people buy the wrong things for years. For a family-scale pond of approximately 3 by 4.5 meters, with a depth of 1 to 1.5 meters, the total installation cost is between $800 and $1,500. This includes the PVC or EPDM liner, which is the main expense. Fingerlings for between $50 and $150 for your first population. Ducklings for between $80 and $150 for a small initial flock, and basic aquatic plants for around $200. That is all. Compare that to a decade of spending on meat and fish at the supermarket, and you begin to understand why this knowledge is so rarely shared. If your land has clay soil, and in the Brazilian countryside, a lot of land does, you can even save on the liner and seal the pond the traditional way, lining it with 15 centimeters of wet clay, compacting it well, and letting it cure for 2 weeks. This method has worked without modification for thousands of years. In the Northeast and the countryside of Minas Gerais, this type of clay sealing is what has always been used in reservoirs and small ponds. Choose a spot that gets at least 6 hours of sunlight a day, but doesn't catch the full afternoon sun to avoid overheating the water. Choose the lowest point on your property where water already tends to pool naturally after it rains. If you fight the natural contours of your land, you will spend your life fighting erosion and drainage problems. Create a shallow shelf around the pond, about 30 centimeters deep and between 60 centimeters and 1 meter wide. This is your bog zone, where the plants will take root. The deepest part in the center, from 1 to 1.5 meters, is where the fish will take refuge during extreme heat or colder nights. Introduce life in stages. Start with the plants. Give them 2 to 4 weeks to take root and for the beneficial bacteria to start colonizing every surface of the pond. Then add your ducks. In a matter of days, you will see the pond activate. The water will become slightly cloudy as the ducks stir up the sediments. This is not a problem. It is the ecosystem waking up. After another month, add your fish. Introduce about 50 fingerlings for every 4,000 liters of water. They will immediately disappear into the depths and you won't see them for weeks. Do not panic. Do not add more fish. They are down there growing in the cool, dark water, eating the phytoplankton that your ducks unknowingly cultivated for a month. During the first 6 months, you do almost nothing. Watch the ducks, check the water clarity, remove excess duckweed if it starts to cover the entire surface, and top off the water level during dry spells. That is the entire maintenance program. By the 6th month, you will start seeing silver flashes when you approach the edge. Your fish are now visible and growing fast. At the end of the first year, depending on the species, you will have fish approaching harvest size and ducks laying between 700 and 900 eggs in their first full year of production. By the 3rd year, you will no longer be managing a project. You will simply be harvesting from a living ecosystem that has permanently intertwined with your land. There is one thing I need to address before reaching the end, which most pond guides completely ignore: the climate. If you live in southern Brazil, in states like Rio Grande do Sul, Santa Catarina, or Paraná, you might experience periods of more intense cold. The good news is that species like tilapia can be managed by harvesting before winter or maintained with a simple cover over the pond that helps retain the temperature. Ducks are naturally cold resistant and will continue laying in the winter if you provide a simple 3-sided shelter with straw bedding. For those living from the southeast and further north, the Brazilian climate is an absurd advantage. Your system will run year-round at full force without interruption. In the semi-arid northeast, where water is scarcer, the pond even functions as a strategic reservoir because the water that feeds the fish and ducks is the same water you can use to irrigate the vegetable garden, full of natural nutrients. Nothing is lost. Everything circulates. Now, at the beginning of this video, I promised you something. Something I have never seen mentioned in a conventional gardening book, a self-sufficiency guide, or a YouTube channel about home food production. The technique I'm going to reveal to you now is called by those who use it in the countryside the simplest free food in the world. And once you understand how it works, you won't believe you spent so much time without using it. The plant is duckweed. I am not talking about duckweed as that little aquatic plant you sometimes see floating in a country pond. I am talking about duckweed deliberately cultivated, strategically harvested, and used as a free, self-replicating protein source that costs you absolutely nothing once established. And here is why this matters so much. Under ideal conditions, duckweed doubles its total biomass in less than 48 hours. This means a small layer of duckweed can become a massive layer in a single week. Duckweed contains between 35 and 45% crude protein on a dry weight basis. More than soybean meal, the protein source upon which the entire commercial poultry and fish feed industry relies. Your ducks will consume the duckweed as fast as it grows. Your fish will eat what the ducks can't reach. And the duckweed absorbs nitrogen from the duck and fish waste, cleaning the water while producing food. It is, all at once, a filter, a fertilizer, and a forage crop. It costs nothing to establish, nothing to maintain, and nothing to harvest. Those who use this system in the countryside report that feed costs drop by more than 60%. The pond produces enough duckweed protein to supplement the natural foraging of insects and plants that the ducks already get from the ecosystem itself. And when you ask these people why more folks don't do this, the answer is always the same. Because the people selling you feed don't want you to know. What you just learned is not a gardening trick, nor is it a self-sufficiency hack. It is the reclamation of a biological truth that has fed more human beings throughout history than any other protein system ever invented, and which was quietly displaced by an industrial food model that requires your dependency to function. Every bag of commercial feed you buy is a vote for that dependency. Every meter of pond ecosystem you build is a vote against it. The families operating these systems in the Brazilian countryside are not doing anything heroic or dramatic. They simply refuse to forget what the earth has always known how to do on its own. If this knowledge has transformed your view on backyard food production, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. We are rescuing the wisdom they tried to bury. Cultivate your own independence. The next secret of the earth will be revealed soon.